Hello viewers and welcome to my Grand Prix blog for the Canadian Grand Prix 2012. Another exciting race, 7 winners from 7 races, wow. But we'll get to that. I suppose from the start of the race, obviously, Pastor Maldonado with his 5-place grid penalty again. A bit unlucky for the gearbox change. Away from the start then, good start for Massa, of course, past Rosberg. There's a lot of jostling for position in the midfield. Of course, in qualifying we had Michael Schumacher, who was badly let down by this passing of the red light, as it were, and letting him down. And Jenson Button just not being able to find any pace at all in qualifying. It's certainly not been an easy weekend for him, obviously not being able to get out in practice, and the same thing happened with practice 3 for Nico Rosberg. So you're always on the back foot when you miss those initial practice sessions. But a good getaway for Sebastian Vettel. He had Vettel, for those German viewers out there. It's been a great start for him, wasn't it? I think when we saw Sebastian flying away and it looked like the race was over, that he was just going to get into his normal motion of things. And the pit stops changed all that. He came out behind one of the Lotuses, that held him up a bit, and then Lewis got in front, and then Fernando stayed out there and he got in front, but obviously wasn't able to hold Lewis back before getting his tyres up to temperature. So from there then the race sort of took shape then. Those three going off in the lead in that order. Lewis pulling away from Fernando and Fernando and Sebastian Vettel. And so then it was just down to consistency and tyres. Lewis, then when his tyres were falling away, you'd see Fernando closing up the gap again. So as if he was controlling that pace all the time. He could have stuck with Lewis, but he was controlling his pace, controlling his tyres. Of course, then we have Lewis Hamilton coming in for a stop. Expecting the other two to stop, and there was then the idea that they weren't going to stop for the rest of the race, so he had a big gap to make up and he had to push very, very hard to make up that gap. Meanwhile, as ever, Michael Schumacher was unlucky again with his DRS staying open. It was noted actually on Sky commentary that had he actually finished in all the races in the position he was in, he would probably be leading the championship right now. So it shows an unbelievable amount of bad luck. But it has to be pointed out, in the good old days, Michael Schumacher was one of the luckiest people you've ever met in your life. And I'd say a good example of that is always Hockenheim 95, when his car ran out of fuel about 4 metres past the finish line. So he has had his fair amount of luck early in his career, and obviously now it's hard for him to get that back again. But no doubt the touch will come back to Michael. It's not always going to be bad luck, and at some point this season everything will come together for him, I have no doubt. Of course there's the disparity with Lewis and Jenson. Jenson a long way back, car not working, tyres not working, a lot of questions and head scratching at McLaren. Meanwhile it was very strong for Grosjean. He was pushing very hard. While we were looking at Lewis closing the gap, Grosjean was closing, Perez was closing, the Saubers were strong. We didn't hear much about Kimi Räikkönen through the day. Kimi Räikkönen's had 2 or 3 races where he struggled a little bit since his earlier form, which was very good indeed. Perhaps the tyres have changed. It seems strange how some of the drivers have sort of struggled. I noticed, you had, for the top teams, you had Alonso, Vettel, Hamilton, and then way further down the grid you had Button, Webber, Massa, and it's strange how the teammates, you've got one driver doing well and the other one not doing so well. It's very hard to get them both turned on at the same time and performing well. So it was a dry race this year, not much else to sort of entertain people in terms of sort of weather conditions or anything like that. It was really just down to tyre management throughout the day, and the front 3 just pulled away and that was it. The Mercedes was expected to have quite an impact on this race with its straight line speed, but even Nico Rosberg, was getting held up from time to time and just couldn't find a way past. And it's been interesting to see how cars, even with DRS, sometimes don't seem to be able to get past, and yet sometimes it seems to be an enormous benefit. It's interesting how you see it working in the race. So obviously for Lewis Hamilton, his first win of 2012, great for him. For Alonso and Ferrari, it was a very strange error. I say strange because the data would tell them the tyres were going to fall off, and the lap time data that was going to come after that. I'm looking at it from an observer point of view, as a viewer. It seemed to me that his lap times were always going to fall away. The opportunity to change tyres had gone. and yet there was an opportunity for him to pit and come out neck and neck, give or take, with Lewis and battle for the win. Either way, Ferrari decided not to make that decision. Perhaps they were testing the car and seeing what they could do with the tyres. Obviously, Vettel came in, was able to get out on the tyres, get back out there and overtake Alonso. So it shows how much pace the Ferrari was losing along the way. But nevertheless, it was great to see Romain Grosjean on the podium, along with Perez, who came back well. It was worth pointing out that it was Grosjean's first ever time racing at Canada, and Perez as well, because this time last year he was suffering from his injury following his crash at Monaco. So great for those guys to get on the podium. A real boost for Lewis and McLaren. It's interesting to see how that relationship's going to continue. They spoke to Ron Dennis afterwards, and it seems like negotiations are in process for him to stay, but it depends on what Lewis wants to do. It seems to be at the moment he's asking for a lot of money. So whether they come to an agreement, who knows? For Jensen, I think McLaren need to understand why one car's finishing at the front and one car's finishing at the back. They need to sort out that balance. And as the season moves on, obviously Lewis, Vettel and Alonso are now up there as title contenders, but there's still a very, very long way to go in the races this season, and I'll be keeping up to date with that with my blogs as well. So not a great deal to talk about this time. I'm going to be looking at the next few races, seeing how the tyres develop, seeing how if we see some championship contenders coming through. I think it'll be interesting to see how this continuing battle goes on. Can Lewis keep that pace now, keep it up there? Can McLaren sort their car out for both drivers? How are Ferrari going to increase their pace as well? They're expecting always new bits on the car. And Red Bull, the little hole didn't do them too much damage, but either way, they weren't as far up today as they were expecting on their long runs, but certainly their short run pace was very good indeed. But that's it from me for now on this brief F1 blog today, and I'll see you all, and I'll be back with another blog in a couple of weeks' time.